Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday morning. We have a new face and a new friend, Taryn Odom. She's one of the principal learning consultants at Instructure. We really like her. We think you'll like her too. So with that, Taryn is going to talk today about overcoming learning gaps with MasteryConnect. Take it away, Taryn.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. So I'm excited to be here with you guys because this is something I'm extremely passionate about, and it's never been more timely than now. So there have been so many innovative educators in the last several years that have been calling for disruption in education to move beyond the status quo of the traditional or historical model of education. And while there have been hotspots of innovation scattered throughout, the biggest dilemma has been systemic change, right? And so these hotspots have been isolated until now. Now, schools across the globe are engaging in fast-tracked research, analysis, and design thinking to create what education should look like and entail, because now it isn't optional, it's necessary. And while COVID-19 has arguably been one of the most challenging global problems, out of this pandemic has grown a great opportunity, and one that should not be taken lightly. While teachers had to adjust their instruction on the turn of a dime this past spring, it's different now. Now is the time for us to be proactive, not reactive. And so we have this opportunity to thoughtfully and intentionally design what teaching and learning can and should look like amidst a global pandemic, but I would argue for the future in general. And our focus has not changed. In fact, it's never been more clear. Our focus and everything we do has to be in the best interest of our students. So let's take a look at what a normal classroom in a normal year generally looks like. So in this particular graphic, you can see that in one fifth grade classroom, students are at 7 different grade levels. Let that sink in for a moment. So the majority of those grade levels are split into thirds, with approximately a third of students being a grade level behind, approximately a third of those students being a grade level ahead, and then approximately a third of those students being on grade level. So that means that 3/4 of students are not at grade level. Again, let that soak in for a moment. So how does that change to a COVID school year? Well, from research-based projections, you can see here that students are likely to return in fall 2020 with approximately 63 to 68% of the learning gains in reading relative to a typical school year, and with 37 to 50% of the learning gains in math. So that is huge. So we have some questions to ask ourselves. If we look at the school level.
Taryn, you're going to kill me. I'm so sorry. But you got to go back a slide for me. You got to go back, because I want to make sure everybody really took that in. This means, everybody, that kids are going to be a little bit behind. Can you break that down, Taryn, for people who aren't as smart as you, like me? Because that's not a good thing.
Exactly. And so this is the problem. This is the problem we're facing. So even in a normal school year, and I'll go back, even in a normal school year, you have this disparity between where students are in any given classroom. And our classroom model that we currently have, we group students by age, right? But we know in those groupings that even though we're grouping by age in a relatively defined parameter, that those students are all over the place in regards to what they know and what they can do in that content area. And so in a normal year, it already looks like this, which is a huge disparity in and of itself. But then once you look at projections for this coming year, because of COVID, you have even larger disparities in where students are. And of course, there are many variables that go into this in regards to, infrastructure and access to technology and all of those things. And so some of those things can be exacerbated in different, in more rural areas, for example. There's a huge rural urban component to this. Obviously, poverty, dealing, thinking about Title I schools and what role they have in this. So there are a lot of factors. So this is kind of across the spectrum. So in some areas, it could be even worse. In some areas, it might be a little bit better. But in general, we know that students are going to come into this school year knowing much less than on a typical school year, which already has a huge disparity. Absolutely.
Wow. Thank you. I promise not to interrupt for another 5 seconds.
No, you interject anytime.
By the way, Kim Shell from Broward in Florida is saying, hi, Taryn.
Hi, Kim. So this should automatically, if you're an educator, this should get you starting to ask some questions, right? So first of all, on the school level, if I'm an administrator, how can I create a schedule that maximizes learning and growth despite what my school opening plan might be? And of course, we know that that's going to look different in different areas of the country. So if you're doing, some areas are doing fully online, some are doing phase 2, 50% capacity, for example. Depending on the school type, there may be just traditional rollout. They're coming every day with enhanced practices, mask and sanitizer and no eating in cafeterias, for example. So you have those things that are happening. But on the scheduling aspect, you have to think of, how am I going to make all this work, right? So that's a key question at the school level. And then also you want to think about at administrative level, how can I support my teachers in a strategic and meaningful way? So if the world has been turned around and now you're used to being a brick and mortar principal, and now you're having to navigate this new approach of distance learning, what does that look like for you and your teachers? How do you meaningfully observe and monitor your teachers and coach them and provide them support when it's totally different? So it's not just about the teachers here, right? So this is affecting all levels. At the teacher level, of course, our minds are racing. How do I know what specific concepts or skills that those students are coming to me? How do I know what they know? How do I know what they're missing? How do I know what skills or standards they have mastered? And then as a result, how do I know and teach to all those different levels? Because we just saw in that graphic that even in a normal year, there are 7 different grade levels represented in a 5th grade classroom. So if you think about that, how can a teacher teach 7 different grade levels in one class? And so, and we're going to talk about those strategies and what that means in a more deep way in just a minute. And then students, if you're looking at the student level, what happens with those students who don't know the concepts or skills that they need and or can't move forward? So do they keep falling further and further behind? Well, that's the last thing that we want, right? What happens to those students who, maybe have super active parents and maybe they're lucky and don't work, I don't know. And so maybe they have actually excelled during this time because they've been working at home and have access and resources available to them. And so when they come back, maybe what do we do with those kids who aren't being challenged or are above grade level? So we want to make sure that we meet the needs of all students. And that's really, really important. So if we take a look at instructional cycles, this top row, it represents the traditional instructional cycle that any teacher is familiar with. Depending on when you entered your teaching, you're very familiar with this. And so the cycle is kind of broken down into linear fashion across time. And so you have the planning, the teaching, you do a little practice, you do some assessment, and you grade that, and you record the grade or not, and then that cycle starts over again. And so you have that baseline there. Well, with mastery learning, you have all of that, but then you also have to compensate for the fact that I have these students down here who didn't get it or who are below in some area. And then also have these students up here. So you're having to take these things into consideration. And when this was brought about, around the 90s or so, the push for this and kind of No Child Left Behind, et cetera, what that equated to for teachers is basically it increases the teacher time, and it's exhausting, and the workload of teachers, because now they're having to do what they were doing in addition to trying to provide additional supports and interventions for teachers in a traditional way. And so again, exhausting. So what performance-based mastery learning does, as you see here in that bottom row, is it still has all of those same components, but you're taking advantage of time and you're condensing all that. So you're working, what I always say is you're working smarter, not harder, right? So that's where, and this is a much more sustainable practice, obviously, because teachers just can't keep working themselves to death. So that's kind of where MasteryConnect comes in. And MasteryConnect makes things even more clearer and easier and more meaningful for students, for teachers, for parents, for admin, for all parties. And so you may already know about MasteryConnect, maybe using MasteryConnect. So if not, just a kind of a quick recap, it was designed as an assessment management system, and it is absolutely that. But it's also a lot more. So you do have the opportunity to, and the heart of learning, which is formative assessment and feedback and that instructional component. But then it also includes curriculum mapping and benchmarking now and teacher collaboration. And it actually is free for any user who wants to go. So you can go sign up at MasteryConnect.com to kind of explore it. And that's something you might put on your to-do list, especially as we talk through some of these awesome pieces as it starts clicking. Oh, okay, this would make sense. This is going to help me identify where my students are. So the model that is used for MasteryConnect is what we call the ITS model. And that stands for I, which is identify levels of understanding. So, and that's at a very granular level, and we're going to take a look at what that means. But we want to basically identify what students know and what they can do. So that's important, right? And traditional assessment methods have done that, state mandated testing, for example. But when you get that data, it's not meaningful. Those students have already left you. When you get benchmark data, you've already gone through those lessons and units. It's not as meaningful. So with this allows for an instant, timely way of informing teachers what students know and can do, so that the very next day they can adjust their instruction to make sure they're truly meeting the needs of all of those students. And so that's where the T comes in. You want to target those students for appropriate intervention. And by targeting, that's not a negative connotation. Think about it as honing in on groups of students that are like groups, so that you can provide those supports that they need, whether, again, they're on the low end of the spectrum or the high end of the spectrum or anywhere in between, that you are actually personalizing that learning for them and meeting their individual needs. And then, of course, there's no educational process without any sort of reflection and self-evaluation. So as teachers, and we're reflective practitioners, thinking about what we're doing and if it's working or not, and adjusting and making sure that we are meeting those needs. So that's where the S comes from. So here you can see a screenshot of the curriculum mapping. So MasteryConnect allows for collaborative and efficient curriculum mapping. And this helps to plan instruction. It helps you with pacing. It frees up teacher time so that teachers can focus on what's most important, which is that ongoing daily instruction and feedback and getting in there with the students. So they don't have all the back end work. And once the curriculum maps are established, they can be copied from semester to semester or year to year. You have the assessments built into there, and that populates your class tracker, which is, so all the dirty work on the back end, boom, is already done for you. So it's also a one-stop shop to bookmark and save and integrate resources from across the web, because we recognize that there are so many valuable things out there that educators have been creating and doing, and we want to, again, work smarter, not harder. So you can, again, pin those and save those and integrate those into your classes. And it allows teachers to be part of a broader community where they can take advantage of hundreds of thousands of assessments that are already created for teachers. And so they can bookmark again and pull assessments to use into their own classes and their own curriculum maps, again, on the premise that we want to work smarter, not harder. We want to use our time in valuable and meaningful ways. But again, the most important and most amazing part of this is the ability to visualize data on a meaningful level. So what you see here is an example of a class tracker. And this shows exactly what students know and what they can do, again, on a very granular level. So if you look across the top, those are standards. So on each standard, it shows what students have mastered and where they are on any particular standard. And so this, in a very quick and easy way, can allow the teacher to see what standards need work or what standards need to be retaught, reassessed. It can also show where there might be special situations with students, where students, you need to hone in on a student and maybe for additional supports for special services or AIG. So you can gather that information very quickly and easily here. And then you can visualize and track growth over time. So for example, here, this is like, I always say, this is like at the eye doctor, where they do like slide 1, slide 2. So first slide, this might be where a teacher starts. And so you can see that the green here, there's some green. So there are some things that have been mastered, but there's a lot of yellow, which is near mastery. And there's a good bit of red, which is the remediation level based on 3 levels of mastery. And then over time, what a teacher and an administrator wants to see is if you take the same class and you're continuing to work with these students and provide high quality content instruction and assessments, then eventually this is what you would like to see. You want to see more green, right? We want to see our students mastering these skills and these concepts and standards. But then it also can show you again over time, you see hopefully here that this poor student, Daryl, and these are all imaginary students' names, so no FERPA non-compliance, so don't worry. So Daryl here, you can see something's going on with Daryl. And so that data is important, but it takes me as the professional in the classroom, my relationship with my students to know what's going on in Daryl's world. Is it a Maslow's issue where at home, you know, he's having to work and he doesn't do homework and he's got a lot of family issues going on? Is it a learning disability issue? So that is where I know that something's wrong, but it relies on me as the teacher, as the professional in that classroom to then go in and figure out what is the best path forward for each of my students and for my instruction. So in addition to all that, you get item analysis, which also helps when you're designing assessments and looking at the rigor and the quality of your questions, and to see even on a student level, which students got it or which didn't. And if they didn't get, what a great teaching tool. If you have a large majority of students answer incorrectly, and then, you know, 3 students that answer correctly, you can pull in, hey, Sydney, can you tell me, how did you solve this problem? Can you teach the class for us? Or you can use a lot of those instructional strategies to help, again, on a much more granular level. So in addition to the item analysis, as a teacher, you can track, if you have multiple classes, you can you can compare your classes. It may not be as valuable if you're a self-contained teacher, but for especially like secondary teachers who teach 3 periods of Algebra 2, you can track all 3 of and compare your different classes with your different trackers. And also, just a quick mention, it allows you, because as teachers, we try to try new strategies. So you're like, I'm going to try this in my 2nd period and see if it works. And then we'll see if it works for 3rd period. So when you do that, if you try out a new strategy, then you can actually have instant data say, make those correlations. Like, is that because I integrated this strategy? And then you can also do that same level of reflection with your admin and across the board. So if you are part of a department and you have similar, teachers teaching the same grade level or content area, depending on whether you're K-5, 6, 8, or 9, 12, or what have you, then admin can look across teachers. And so in those conversations one-on-one with teachers, they can talk about that. You can integrate mentors. You can use those things in meaningful ways in PLCs to really take a look at data, again, that is meaningful, to have those conversations and help support teachers in meaningful ways. So as an administrator, you can do growth projections. You can even create growth reports to aid in decision-making processes and in conversations with your boards of education, your district and your state admin. And at a student level, with the student and parent portal, you can look at student mastery data and on a broad level, which is what you see here, and even on a broken down level. And this is one of my favorite reports. And so this report shows what students know and can do on one individual student report. And so what you see here, you can see that this particular student, Rachel, who again is imaginary, that she's mastered 2 of the standards that have been covered, but she's in remediation on 1, and she has 4 areas that have been covered so far where she is near mastery. And so through the portal or via paper, or there are many multiple modes of providing this to parents. But think about how awesome this is for parents. So I'm a parent of 4 boys, and I know when I get a progress report with an arbitrary number, what does that tell me? Like, that doesn't tell me what my child can do. That doesn't tell me how I can help my child. But think about this. So this shows the language of the standard, and you can even customize that. So you can put it into like layman's terms, so you don't have to be an educator to interpret it. So you can just say, I can do a multiplication problem, single digit multiplication problem, for example. You can even translate it into multiple languages if you'd like. And so if a student has not mastered that skill, then that is informative to me as a parent. That lets me know, okay, I know exactly what my student needs to work on, and I know now how I can help him or her. So that is just so powerful to me, to have these conversations with students. Like if you're a secondary teacher and you have these conversations with students and you pull them aside and you can walk through this, like this is where you are, this is, and come up with those strategies and plans to put, for growth, one-on-one, in small groups, whole group, but then also with parents, because I think parents are extremely important, or should be an important part of the educational process as well. And if all that is not exciting enough, so here's the kicker: MasteryConnect is now integrated into Canvas. So prior, a little context, MasteryConnect was its own company. It was acquired by Instructure, who's obviously the parent company of Canvas. And so we have been working really hard behind the scenes to integrate these 2 products. And so that is a continual process, and we're continuing. In fact, there's some things that are rolling out this week. So we have a roadmap of things that are coming down the pipe to make this even more exciting and streamlined. But it is, like I said, already integrated into Canvas. There are a couple different ways you can do that. So you can see on the screenshot, you have the global navigation integration, where you can access MasteryConnect in the portal through Canvas. So instead of having to log into 2 different sites, you log into Canvas. It picks up automatically where you were when you left before. So if you're a student, it picks up where you were. If you were a teacher, it picks up where you were in your tracker or wherever you last left off. So that's pretty amazing. And then in addition, you can deliver assessments through Canvas. So if a school or district is already a Canvas user and they're interested in integrating with MasteryConnect, then they can do that. And so you can still have all the assessments that you already do, and you can basically make them MasteryConnect assessments where that data will live in both places. So you have Grade Pass Pack, where the scores will live in Canvas, but they will also live in MasteryConnect, because MasteryConnect is not a grade book. So MasteryConnect is for mastery tracking. And so if you do want to have a score for something that you include as part of the student's grade, you have the option to do so, or you can do it in a more formative way in Canvas and set it to, like, it gets into the details, like you set it to 0. So you have a lot of options there. But what that allows you to do is, especially in the world of COVID, if you're not meeting with your students face-to-face, this allows to continue using Canvas if you're already a Canvas user, and do everything that you're doing, but now to get all of this critical information about where are my students coming to me from with this COVID learning gap or COVID slide. You hear it term different things in different places. And so it gives you that data, and then what do I need to do next? And we've had some wonderful conversations with districts that have been planning since spring, and they're like, oh crap, what are we going to do? We've really got to get our minds right and get a good handle on this. And so there are some amazing things going on across the nation where they are moving this in a way, and I think that it's going to be for the better, because you think about this, yes, we're doing this for COVID, but once this is set up, this is the way learning should be, right? So instead of teaching to the middle and hoping that some get it and the majority get it, and then if they don't, they don't, this is, no, this is, revolutionary in thinking, should we really group students by age? Or, we don't want to hold back students who know and can do all of these things. Let's let them go, fly, grow, follow your passions. And then let's get those lower end learners where they need to be. And also, again, following their passions and doing things that interest them. So a lot of exciting opportunities there. So all of this is built on, now obviously in Instructure, we're an ed tech company. And so we are focused a lot of times on tool, but what I love about Canvas, what I love about MasteryConnect and Instructure as a whole is it's not just about the tool. So this graphic is one of my favorite ones. We know and we recognize, and we're actually all educators almost, a large portion of us, especially in learning services, that at the very foundational level is the belief about students and learning and teaching. So the tools are nothing without those underlying beliefs. And then after that, you have your instructional practices and how you put it into action, and then those structures. And then at the very top, you can worry about the tools. So we acknowledge this, and this is a constant focus for us on both sides, MasteryConnect and Canvas, which MasteryConnect is part of the Canvas platform. And so through that, we focus on the Canvas success model. And you may or may not have seen this, but it is super important, regardless in any tool that you use. This is research-based when you think about honing in on your vision and making sure that you establish and define what your vision is and your success measures. But then you want to make sure you create plans. And we talk about communication and training engagement plans, and we work through those as consultants. And then we execute what those plans are going to look like. And of course, there are parts to that. And then we assess how they're working, a lot of data analysis. And then do we adjust the vision? Do we change it a little bit for the future state? So that's kind of built around the Canvas model. And so what we do in learning services is we do all of these elements. So we're made up of principal consultants, principal learning consultants, and that they would oftentimes talk schools or districts through this. And then in the execution phase, you might find basically trainers, we call them learning specialists or learning services associates, who would train you on the technical things, like how do I do this in MasteryConnect? Can you, we have the core PD where we walk through kind of navigation and the history and the purpose and how to do basic items. And then there are more intermediate professional development offerings as well, instead of just kind of the technical training. And then the principal learning consultants, we also talk about change strategy. We talk about the, in addition to the product expertise, or just coach admin on how to do data analysis, or how do we take that data that this is giving and how do we use this or make plans for our particular schools. So lots of different offerings that we can help with there. And then in the assessment phase of that model, again, with the principal consultants, we do a lot of the data review and analysis to just analyze the situation and to make a path forward for the next school year, and if adjustment is needed. And so this graphic, I'm a visual person, if y'all didn't notice. I like this graphic because, again, it shows a tiered model that at the very bottom, as we are navigating this upcoming school year, and I'm sure teachers are super overwhelmed with all of these tools that are coming at them, same thing for principals, and they're like, what do I do? And oh my gosh, like they're in survival mode, like I can't do this, I'm freaking out. Like I'm in these groups and they're like, can I just pay somebody to do my Canvas homepage? No, it's not, we can help you. There are so many resources out there, and it's really not that difficult. So the very basic level, you have that product awareness. So that I've got this new tool, I'm going to discover it and figure it out. Then you have the application part, where I'm starting to use it. I made something, I used it, great. And then once the dust settles, and the urgency, the survival mode of COVID and this upcoming fall year passes, then I'm sure and hope that teachers and admin will be dig deeper into instructional best practices. We recognize that right now, again, there's a huge sense of urgency, and our focus should always be on best practices for instruction and pedagogical methods. But we also acknowledge that in a COVID world right now, we keep hearing, like, we just got to get in there. We got to get in there and we got to get our content in there. We got to be ready for the school year. So we're here to help as a consulting team at Instructure. So that is available. And any questions, or I don't know.
Yeah, Taryn, why don't you, excellent presentation. Cynthia Bautista is asking, Cynthia's from out in California, who does she talk to? If they're looking for more training, do they talk to their Canvas admin, to their MasteryConnect admin? Where should they go?
Great question. So if you are an existing user of Canvas or MasteryConnect, then you should speak with your CSM team or representative, and they will direct you in the best place to go. So if you're an existing user, that's where you go. If you are currently not a MasteryConnect or Canvas user, then depending on your interest in the products, then you would go to, and you can just start at Instructure.com and you can see all the products that we have there. And then from there, you can see the consulting options. And I don't know if you have the link, or I can provide that, Mark, too.
Why don't you throw it there in the private chat and then I can drop it in. If some of you are like, I don't even know who that is, feel free to send me a note. Mark.booth, BOOTHE at Instructure.com, and I can point you in the right direction. If you don't know who your CSM is, we should hook you up, because they are. Oh, I didn't realize you were just saying the Instructure.com.
Okay, I'm gonna get the consulting one too for you.
We did have a question here as well. Looks like Cindy is asking, and this is about the integration part between Canvas and MasteryConnect. She said, which level is integrated?
Which level, like grade level? Is that the question?
She didn't give it. Cindy, maybe in the comments, if you can give us a little bit more specificity. She just said, which level is integrated?
Okay, and while she's doing that, I will just give you some general context too. So with MasteryConnect, it is like grade level agnostic, basically. So currently in MasteryConnect, you have standards for all 50 states. So you have the Common Core traditional standards for your 4 core, and then you also have all of the state standards, because we know some states have like changed or modified and aren't using the Common Core. So all of those standards are built in, which is amazing. So when you make your tracker, it pulls all of those standards into your tracker, and then on top of that, you can actually write and create custom standards. So if you have if you want to write your own, or if you have, let's say, right now you have a class on photojournalism or biotechnology, one of those like outside the box classes, still very, very cool, very important. But you basically wrote the curriculum, let's say, and so you've identified these specific standards and objectives, so you can input that data yourself individually. We also offer that as a service where we can input standards for you depending on how large they are. So while it's always kind of traditionally been a K-12 tool, it absolutely can translate to anything. I mean, technically even professionally. So if you're looking at, as an administrator, you want to create a curriculum map on, the standards for high quality instruction or whatever your rubric might be. I mean, technically you could have that and see how your teachers are and track their mastery in those core areas. So it's very flexible. And I think that's one of the cool pieces about it too, is the ability to integrate any of those standards, but it's not dedicated to a specific grade level. And was that her question, or was that?
She didn't come back. Cynthia did come back and say, though, would those standards also include ESL or ELD ones, or those ones that we would add?
Yes. So absolutely. So WIDA standards, all of that, absolutely included. In fact, I did some work with a school in Oklahoma, which is an international school there. And so it's an immersion school. And so they have all of the core areas, but they're taught in Spanish and they're taught in French. And so I did work with them in regards to what that would look like for them. So all of those things can absolutely be included. Great question.
Awesome. Well, big shout out to Taryn, who did just a stellar job today. These are available. You go to Instructure.com or go to our Canvas LMS YouTube page, you can find all 80 plus or however many it is of these live streams that we've done now. Also, big shout out. I'm hoping that everybody who's watching is planning to attend CanvasCon Online, which is going to be on October 15th. If you didn't know, it's this free event. LeVar Burton, Sal Khan, a whole bunch of other excellent speakers are going to be there, and you need to come. So if you haven't signed up, it's time. Sign up today. Taryn, thanks so much. Thanks everybody for joining. We are off tomorrow and Friday on live streams. I'll be back on Monday. We'll see everybody then.
All right, thanks. Bye.